When it comes to putting letters and words on a page, Illustrator has tools to let you do just about anything you can think of. There are features for precisely formatting letters and paragraphs, and there are also turns for turning text into shapes. A new feature that I can't wait to show you is called the Touch Type tool, and it makes it easier than ever to modify individual letters. So what are we waiting for? Let's go do it.
To get type onto the artboard, we use the Type tool. And you see we have the Type tool over here. Sometimes I'll call it the Text tool, but hey, it's all the same thing. And you see it has a little triangle there, so we know that there's a flyout. Click and hold, and we can see the various tools in there. The first one, the regular old Type tool, that's what you'll probably use most of the time. Let's say if you want just a single line of text, like you might use for a headline or something, you'll use the Type tool. But you could also use it if you want a paragraph of text. And when I talk about a paragraph of text, I mean text that wraps in a space. Then you might look at this Area Type tool and say, hey, isn't that what that is? And, well, the Area Type tool does let you have paragraphs, but it's for a special case. And we'll take a look at that later on in this chapter. Type on a path is pretty much what it sounds like. If you have a path, could be a curve, could be a shape, and you want the type to go along on that path, that's the tool you use. Now, we have three other tools here. I'm not going to go into these in this course. Those are mostly if you're going to use Asian languages. But maybe there are some rare cases where you do want vertical type. They work the same way as these initial three. Just the type goes vertically. And then at the bottom we have the Touch Type tool. The Touch Type tool is new to Illustrator Creative Cloud, and also we'll take a look at that later on in this chapter. So let's just start with the regular plain old Type tool. Just click, and I have a plain old artboard here on the page. The color mode doesn't matter, but let's zoom in here a little bit. I'll press Command plus or Control plus in Windows just so we can zoom in here and see what's going on. So if we just want a single line of text, just put the mouse pointer somewhere and click, and you see we have our cursor flashing. Type in any old text, doesn't matter. And when you have your text tool active, we have various text options up here on the control bar. So let's do this. Maybe I'll just select the text. And you see we can choose character, we can choose if we want bold or whatnot. Now, this particular font, the default font here, Myriad Pro, has a lot of options. That's really great. Most fonts don't have so many options. Most fonts will have just like a regular bold and italic, and that's about it. We can also choose the size, and size also is pretty much self-explanatory. But let's see what's going on with the character. You notice there's a little magnifying glass, and that's also new to this version. First of all, if you click the down arrow, you have all your different fonts. Now, the fonts that I have on this machine may be different from the fonts that you have on yours. Also, I'm using a Macintosh. If you're using Windows, of course, you'll have a different set of fonts. So I'm not really so concerned with which font we use, but you see you could scroll up or down, and you can see samples of the different fonts that you have. Choose one. Doesn't matter, just so you can see a change. And let's say we want this to be a little bigger. I'll go over here and make it a little bigger so we can see it. And then over here I can see, oh, okay, well this font has a whole bunch of options here that I can use. Click off it so you can see what's going on. But here's what's really cool, and that's what this magnifying glass is all about. Let's select the text. And let's say I wanted to use one of the Adobe fonts. Click here and just start typing, and you see the name of the font there is highlighted. Just start typing Adobe. And notice what happens. It filters it so that you can see only the Adobe fonts. Some fonts have bold in the name. So maybe you really want to find any font, whether it's an Adobe font or not, that's a bold type font. We'll just delete that. And you see when you delete that, then you can see all of the fonts in there. I'll just type the word bold. And now I can see all of the bolded fonts here. I'll just delete that and I'll type the word condensed. And now I can see all of the condensed fonts. This is really great because you can really narrow down your choices. So I'll just choose one. I'll pick this one here. And let's say, again, we want to change the size. Now over here where we have the font size selector, of course you could hit the down arrow and pick a number, but you could also use the up and down buttons if you want to dynamically make the text bigger or smaller. One of my favorite shortcuts is if you want to make the text bigger, you can press Command Shift and the greater than sign. If you're in Windows, it would be Control Shift and the greater than sign. Greater than sign, if you take a look on your keyboard and you see the letter M, it's 2 keys to the right is the greater than sign. And if you press Command Shift less than sign, or in Windows, Control Shift less than sign, you can make the text 1 step smaller. And by the way, that's not just in Adobe Illustrator. It'll work in InDesign, it'll work in Photoshop, it'll work in Microsoft Word and PowerPoint, many different places.
So we can apply color pretty much the same way we apply color to any old object.
Is we can go over here and choose a color. Maybe I'll make this green. I'll deselect so I can get a better look at it. Or we can go over here into the swatches panel, or you could go into the color panel. Here, let me make it a dark blue this time and deselect. So coloring text is pretty much like coloring any object. You want to be careful that you're giving a color to the fill and not to the stroke, because let's say if I choose the stroke there and I select the text and I go back and I apply color, you notice it gets kind of thicker. We have a stroke on there. Now sometimes it's what you want, but very often it's really not. Although what's also kind of cool is if maybe you do want a stroke and not fill, we can select the fill box, hit the little slash, and now we have kind of like do-it-yourself outline text. Once again, let's just select this text here. I want to get rid of this color panel. Over here on the control bar, I have this little link here for character and also one for paragraph. So if I click character, I have kind of like a little drop down for the character panel. By the way, there's that touch type tool. Ignore that for now. We'll look at that later on in the chapter. And the two most important things here that you want to be aware of is this box here, that's the font size, and this box here is for the leading. Leading meaning spacing between lines of a paragraph. And you notice that this has parenthesis. And this also, if you're used to using leading in other programs, works the same way. The fact that that leading is in parenthesis means that the leading is automatic. What that automatic leading means is that there's 20% more space between lines of text. So that right now I have just 28 point text. So that extra 20% gives me 33.6. So that way I won't have descenders like the bottoms of, let's say, G's and J's brushing up against the ascenders of text on the line below it. Let's say the tops of D's and T's. So I'll just go in here and let's say maybe I'll make that 36 points. When I click off here, that goes away. Now you can have that persistent by using a regular panel. If you go up to the window menu, and then now you notice there's nothing for character here, but if you go down here towards the bottom and you see there's type and then there's a flyout and character, and you have the shortcut here, Command T or Control T in Windows, and now you can have that character panel here. And you notice we don't have all of the options that we had up there, or at least I don't on mine. If you want to see those options, click the little down arrow, context menu arrow there, choose Show Options, and now you can see everything again. And you see up here on the control bar we have paragraph link, and you can click that, and that's where you have paragraph layout, things like is your text going to be left justified, center justified, right justified, is it going to be indented from the left, first line indent, indented from the right, and so on. And when you choose any of these, then that panel goes away. But you see here in the same panel is paragraph, and we have the same items there. Now, since a lot of these deal with multiple lines of text, let's put some text on the page. Now, if you want to type a lot of stuff, go right ahead. What I find is going to be a little bit easier here is if we just paste some text that I have already prepared for you. You can go and open up a text file and then copy the text, come back here and paste, but there's an easier way. First of all, let's just maybe scroll down here. Move this out of the way. Scroll down here on the page. So we want to put some text down here. Right now, because we have our text cursor flashing in there, I'm not going to be able to do it. So let's deselect. I'll just go and get the selection tool, click on the empty space, and get the type tool back. But before I draw a box here, I want to go and get the text. I don't want to give you a whole lot of typing to do. I certainly don't want to do a lot of typing. So I'm going to go into the Finder. And in the Finder, I'm going to go into the desktop, into my Project Files folder. If you're in Windows, you could go into the Windows File Explorer. It's basically the same thing. And in the project files folder, which I have on the desktop, I'm going to go into the chapter 8 folder and double click this file called alice.txt. Now you may or may not see the txt extension. Don't worry about that, it's there even if you don't see it. I'll double click it and I have the first few paragraphs of Alice in Wonderland showing up here in my text editor. All I'm going to do is I'm going to select it and copy it. So I'll press Command A or Control A in Windows, in your Windows text editor. Guarantee that will select all the text. I'll copy, I'll press Command C or Control C in Windows. And let's go back to Illustrator. And now in Illustrator, I'll draw a box here. So this box will allow us to put in paragraphs of text. And now you can see my text cursor is flashing there. Now, because I was just editing text that's 36 points, you see it's 36 points up here. So I'm going to make this a more reasonable size. Maybe 11 points will be good. And now I'll paste. I'll press Command V or Control V in Windows. And now all the text pastes in. If you take a look here in the lower right corner, there's this little symbol. It's like a little red plus sign in a box. That's called the overflow symbol. It means that there's more text that isn't being displayed on the page. So you have really a couple of choices. One choice is you can make this box bigger, or another choice is you can take the text and continue it in another box. So let's do the enlargement first. I'll get the selection tool. I'll put my mouse pointer over here and extend it. And see, it's still not quite big enough. There's a lot of text that I grabbed. So let's shrink this here a little bit more, and I'll show you the other method. So what I'm going to do first thing is go over and I'll actually click that box. And when I click that little plus sign, you see we get this mouse pointer with some kind of grayed out text there. This is what's called the loaded text cursor. And if you've ever used Adobe InDesign or way back in the day Adobe PageMaker, it's basically the same thing. And what I'm going to do now is I'll put my mouse pointer over here and I'll drag another box. Now I could simply click, but I want to define how tall this box is. And now you see the text is continued.
So the cool thing is these are dynamically linked.
If you take your first box and shrink it, then you see the text that's being kind of squeezed out, eliminated from there, is now down over here. These are the basics of getting text onto the page and manipulating it. What I'll show you in the next lesson is actually an easier way, I think, of placing text on the page, and we'll also do a little bit of paragraph formatting.